Ladies and gentlemen, if I could ask you to go ahead and take your seats. We are especially honored by the President of the United States of America to be with us this evening. He was with us in 1995 at the first gala banquet. Then and he was here in 1996, and now here with us in the year 2000. The President has been very well aware of the issues that are confronting the Asian Pacific American community. And on the 9th of June, 1999, he took the bold step of issuing Executive Order 13125, establishing his commission on initiatives relative to Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. He did it because he was concerned about the health and the well-being of the Asian American Pacific Islander community. I have the privilege of chairing that commission. We have 14 other members of the commission, many of whom are here this evening, and we had the opportunity last week to meet for the first time, and we met for 3 days. But this president has had now in his administration the largest number of Asian American Pacific Islanders that he has appointed to key positions in his administration. And the President recognizes that many of them are here this evening. But the fact that he appoints people of strong caliber in terms of their abilities and then has them sitting at the table making high policy decisions. And so this is an individual who has recognized what Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders contribute to this great nation and has them also on his team. And so without any further ado, it is my great honor to be able to present to you the President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton. President, thank you. Yes, in fact, and I thought Laura had given me the list.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, here you go. Here, I got it.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We had a wonderful day at the White House. For all of you that were there, I thank you for coming. I thank my good friend Norman Netta. He thought he had retired from public life when he left the Congress. And he found that there is life after politics, but there's no life without politics. I got him back in, and I thank him for that. I also want to thank the members of the United States House who are here. I have no glasses in this list, so I'm going to show my age here. But the chair of the APA caucus, Bob Underwood, Lane Evans, Shirley Berkeley, Julian Dixon, Donna Christensen Green, and Phil Crane, thank you all for being here. I'd also like to acknowledge one member of Congress who is not here, who led our efforts on China PNTR, Bob Matsui. I thank him as well for what he did. Thank you all. I want to thank our Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Bill Lan Lee, who is here. And I had a lot of fun today with Dolly G. I think she's still here. She's not on her honeymoon yet. If she's not, thank you very much for being here. And I want to thank all the people at the White House, but especially Laura Eford in my Office of Public Liaison. And thank you. The director of our office, Mary Beth Cahill, came over here with me tonight, and we were laughing. She's here. You may know I had to go to a memorial service for a young friend of mine today in Rhode Island. That's why I'm a little late. And when I leave you, I'm going to the Sons of Italy dinner. And so I said to Mary Beth, you know, I said, here we are, two Irish going to the Asian Pacific dinner and the Sons of Italy dinner. Is this a great country or what? I mean, is this, what is this? Let me begin by just saying a heartfelt thank you to the members of the Asian American Pacific Institute for the support you have given to the efforts that Vice President Gore and I have made over these last 7.5 years. It's meant more than you can possibly know. I was here 5 years ago, as Norm said, when you launched the Institute. You've come a long way since then. You have embodied the wisdom of the Chinese proverb that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And you have taken a lot of steps in the last 5 years. You've gotten more Asian Pacific Americans interested, informed, and involved in the political process. You've had an impact on a lot of vital issues. You've helped to form more unity among the great diversity of the Asian Pacific community in the United States. When I was here in '95, I said, if we only understand what an incredible resource our people are, we can have more opportunities than any other country. I still believe that. I think no nation is so well positioned for this new century, for a global economy and an increasingly globalized society as the United States, if we are prepared to make the most of our diverse talents, our heritage, our contacts, what we know, what we feel, what we understand. The first Japanese immigrants came here in 1843. Their spirit helped to build this country. The people who came to build the Transcontinental Railroad over 130 years ago and are still throughout the Mississippi Delta in my home region helped to build this country. The people who helped to put the first Asian American in Congress in 1957 helped to build this country, and so have all of you. Now there are more than 9 million Americans who trace their roots to Asia and the islands of the Pacific, more than 25 nationalities, more than 75 languages, hundreds of different ethnic groups, all with a long, rich legacy of working hard and overcoming obstacles to pursue the American dream. You have greatly enriched the quality and the character of the United States, and for that I am profoundly grateful. You have strengthened our common values of family, faith, and work, and our common vision of a better future for our children. For 7.5 years, I have tried to reinforce those values and advance that future. I am grateful that we are in the longest economic expansion in history with the lowest unemployment rate in 30 years, 32 years now, with the lowest female unemployment rate in 40 years, the lowest African American and Hispanic unemployment rates ever recorded, a 20-year low in poverty, over a 10% drop in poverty among Asian Pacific Americans alone. Last year, the SBA approved loans to the Asian Pacific community in America exceeding $2 billion, more than 3.5 times the amount approved in the year before I took office. I have tried to make sure that we would go forward together. I'm grateful that our social fabric is on the mend, something of immense concern to all of you. Crime at a 25-year low, teen births down 7 years in a row, adoptions up 30%, welfare rolls cut in half to their lowest level since 1968. Expanded Head Start, 90% of our kids immunized against serious diseases for the first time in our history. 21 million people took advantage of the family and medical leave law. 5 million families benefited by the Hope Scholarships to send their kids to college. 150,000 young Americans, many of them Asian Pacific Americans, have served their communities in AmeriCorps. I am grateful for all of that. Our country, I believe, is moving to develop a national security strategy for the 21st century, which keeps a strong defense but relies on cooperation wherever possible. And I do believe that far more important than the obvious economic benefits, it is the chance to have a more secure future. That was the most important reason for the House of Representatives adopting the permanent normal trade relations with China yesterday, and I'm very, very grateful to them for doing that. Now, having said that, you may have noticed that this is an election year. Since it's the first time I haven't been on the ballot in 26 years, I've hardly noticed it at all, but I understand most days I'm okay about it. And so I want to ask you to do something that comes naturally to you, whether you're Democrats or Republicans or independents. I want to urge you to use this year to mobilize your communities and those beyond your communities to have the right approach. Because the great question here is, what are we going to do with our prosperity? What are we going to do with our increasing social harmony? What are we going to do with our relative security in a still dangerous world? How are we going to make the most of a moment that truly is unprecedented in the lives of all of us in this room? And maybe it's never happened to you, but at least I can speak for the Irish. Everyone I know over 30 has made a mistake in his or her personal or professional life, not because things were going so poorly, but because things were going so well. Sometimes when things are going well, you break your concentration. You think there are no consequences to taking the momentary benefit instead of the long-term look. And I have decided that I would try to devote myself this year to getting the American people to take the long view, to say, what are we going to do with this magic moment? And I think we ought to say, okay, we can do things now we couldn't do 7 or 8 years ago, when I was preoccupied overwhelmingly with trying to turn the country around and get people together and go beyond the divisive politics that had paralyzed us into a rhetoric in Washington that I sort of characterized as, I've got an idea, you've got an idea, let's fight. And we're trying to move beyond that. And that's how we balance the budget and produce this surplus. When I leave office, we will have paid off about $360 billion of our national debt. And I confess, even I didn't think we could do that in 1992. If I had gone before the people in 92 and said, vote for me, and when I leave office, we'll have 3 years of paying down the debt, you would have said, he seems like a nice young man, but he's a little touched. We better send him home. So I ask you to think of that. What are those big questions? Well, first of all, in spite of our growing prosperity, there are still people in places untouched by it. And we ought to take this opportunity to give them a chance to be a part of the American dream. Just for example, almost half of all Cambodian Americans, 2 out of 3 Hmong Americans still live in poverty. Over half of the South Asian Americans have earned a bachelor's degree, far above the 37% national average, but less than 6% of Cambodian and Laotian Americans have completed college. In an age in which getting a world-class education is a prerequisite to full participation in the global economy. We can't rest until every community, every family, every individual has a chance to be a part of this magnificent opportunity that so many of you have worked so hard to create. That's why I signed that executive order establishing the Advisory Commission. The Commission will work on ways to get the information we need to make the decisions that ought to be made to help the discrete groups of Asian Pacific Americans that are still not fully participating. They'll help us to lower the cultural and linguistic and other barriers to health and social services. But we have to do more. Just this week, we had what I think is a truly historic meeting in the White House that was some understandably sort of overlooked in the great amount of attention given to the China vote. But the Speaker of the House of Representatives and more than a dozen members of Congress, equally divided in both parties, came together in the White House, and we said, look, we're trying to open new markets abroad, but we have to create new markets at home, and we want to give people the same incentives to invest in poor areas of America and in the people of America that aren't fully participating. We now give people to invest in poor areas throughout the world. It's a historic moment, and if we pass this legislation, and I believe we will, it could be the most significant anti-poverty initiative in a generation. I hope all of you will support it without regard to your party. What are some of the other big questions? I won't go through the answers or what I think the answers. The important thing is you have to decide what you think the answers are. How are we going to guarantee every child a world-class education, make sure everybody can afford to go to college? How are we going to make sure that people who work for a living don't raise their children in poverty? The child poverty rate in America is still about 18%, as wealthy as we are. How are we going to help people to balance work and family? Something that many Asian Americans have been brilliant at, but it's not easy. How are we going to make sure that in this new and difficult world, we continue to be a force for peace and reconciliation and help other people resolve their racial and ethnic and religious conflicts that are leading to so much turmoil and could disrupt our future? What are our obligations to people in the poorest parts of the world that are being plagued by Africa, by AIDS, malaria, and TB, and other problems? All the children that are dying out there every day just because they don't have access to safe water. If we do something about that, won't that strengthen our security and make us more prosperous in the years ahead because other people can raise their children in a good environment? And how are we going to build one America here at home? How can we make our country the safest big country in the world? What are we going to do about the aging of America when 2/3 of our people will be working but 1/3 will be retired, our adults? Well, maybe more older people will work. We lifted the earnings limit on Social Security almost unanimously. It was a very good thing to do. But unless you young people dramatically increase your birth rates or we dramatically increase immigration, when all us baby boomers retire, we have to ask ourselves, how can we preserve the integrity of Social Security and Medicare, and I think add a prescription drug benefit to the seniors in ways that don't, burden their ability to raise our children or our children's ability to raise our grandchildren? How can we do that? And to me, most important of all still by far is, how can we build one America? How can we tear down the remaining barriers between us rooted in our differences? I have never believed that we should try to homogenize America. I think we're becoming more interesting every day. You obviously agree by the reaction you had when I told you I was going to the Sons of Italy dinner later. The trick is to respect our diversity, to go beyond it, to celebrate our diversity, to actually think it's a great thing and have fun with it, but to recognize that the reason we can enjoy it is because our common humanity and our common respect for the values of our Constitution are even more important than our diversity. That's the trick. And so the first thing we've got to do is make sure everybody has a chance to participate. That's why we've got 70 Asian Pacific Americans in the administration. That's why I nominated Bill Landley, and I still hope the Senate will have a blast of enlightenment and confirm him. I keep working on that. Before I took office, it had been 14 years since an Asian Pacific American had been nominated for a federal judgeship. We have appointed 5 so far. Yesterday, the Senate, I want to thank them. I've given them such grief because they've been so slow confirming my appointments. But yesterday, they did confirm 16 judges. So I thank Senator Lott and the Senate for doing that, and I hope it is the beginning of a trend. And I hope that trend will include Dolly G. from California. But I think we should adopt hate crimes legislation. I think we ought to pass the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. I think that every school in this country should have programs which bring different people together. And if the student body's not diverse, they ought to bring people in from outside to talk, to ask questions, to understand what it is about all these myriad people that make up America that are different and what it is we have in common. I think this is profoundly important. And so I will just leave you with this. I've had a great time. You've been good to me. I'm not done. We're going to get a lot of things done in the next 7 months. But you, through this organization and other efforts, have been brought into the mainstream of American public debate. You unite people across all kinds of ethnic and cultural lines and religious lines because of your common Asian Pacific heritage. Also, different philosophical and political lines. But true to your values, you can have a pivotal effect in getting America to take this millennial year to ask and answer the question, what will we do with this moment of good fortune? You know, nothing lasts forever, and that keeps us going through the bad times, knowing that nothing lasts forever. But in good times, it means we must be careful, vigilant. We must nurture and be grateful for these opportunities and make the most of them. So I ask you to think about that. If I were to receive a vision from heaven tonight that I was going to pass from this earth tomorrow and I could have one wish, and God said, now I'm not a genie, you don't get 3 wishes, I'll just give you one. I would wish for us to be one America, genuinely one America. Because I believe, because we've got hundreds of stories in this room that illustrate there is nothing that we cannot achieve if we're given a chance, a fair chance. And if we understand that everybody matters, everybody's got a role to play, and we all do better when we help each other. It's a simple little formula in the digital age, but it'll carry us right where we need to go. And you can make sure it happens. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you.